Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about why the murder case against the suspect accused of killing Charlie Kirk will likely take place in Utah State Court and not federal court. It's actually a really elementary principle of state, federal law, and our federalism, though it's been honored in the breach for decades, it seems, that the basic default for all cases, big, little, and the like, is state court. 98% of criminal cases take place in state court. Moreover, though, again, we are so used to thinking of big case, FBI, federal court, that we're really less and less aware of it. The Constitution is express that there's no such thing as general federal criminal jurisdiction. When you're talking about, okay, there are just crimes out there generally and who are going to do them, state prosecutors are the ones who do them. Or so it seems. Why is it then that in case after big case, we wind up in federal court? Well, because the Congress over the 200 years or so has passed more and more laws, criminal laws. There used to be hardly any, and I think the first one was passed in the 19th century. But they have acted on their interstate commerce power, which is probably the most robust power that the Congress possesses. And it's not simply that they've tried to use it again and again. It itself has expanded because the economy has expanded and become more complicated. So it seems sometimes almost a kind of pretext, really, that if you have a crime and they cross state lines or you use mail, that, by the way, in the 18th century, 19th century, not a normal state of affairs, but that can provide the possibility of federal jurisdiction. And then with real criticism here, the Congress has again and again and again over the last 30, 40, 50 years created crimes for federal jurisdiction. And so, for example, the killing of Kirk, you look in the federal books. Is there something special? It seems like maybe it was a terrorist attack. And in recent years, prosecutors, I've been among them, have tried to make the case for a terrorism federal statute. Might be a good thing now, given the incredible excesses of the Trump administration, that we don't have one. But we don't have one. We do have a federal criminal hate crime statute. So if somebody carries out a crime specifically targeting minorities who are subject to federal constitutional protection, race, religion, sexual orientation, there's a crime on the books for that. But just ordinary, regular old murder, and he's got 3 likely charges here, just doesn't give rise to federal prosecution and leaves state prosecution. Now, very often there are both federal and state crimes that can be stated. And any federal prosecutor will tell you, that's me. Any federal courts professor will tell you, that's also me. It can engender a really strong kind of turf battle. Obviously, we've seen Kash Patel and others out there in Utah grandstanding, actually making a few false moves, and you wouldn't know that they didn't think they're in charge. But there's not a case here for the feds to bring. What there is a case for the feds to help out on. And in particular, in a case that is brought under state law, but there you can really use federal criminal assistance, a well-run federal system, emphasis on well-run. We're not really sure the state of play, especially in the FBI, but a federal system is able to lend its support technically, person power, legal assistance, and the like. And here we've seen these really odd etchings on gun casings that apparently have special meaning in sub levels of the video game world in which the shooter seems to have basically lived. Getting that kind of interpretation, expertise, handling it right, that might all be something that you'd look to the ATF for. You'd look to the FBI for a lot of forensic evidence and their general expertise in certain big murder cases, even though this isn't one. The big difference here, assuming it stays in Utah, and I don't see how, I don't see right now a federal play to stay in Utah, is Utah has a very strong cameras in the courtroom policy. Federal courts, as you probably know, have none. So you'll be having this trial with whatever kind of sensational aspects it includes, live and televised. Now, this won't be for a while. It will, most trials, even in sensational cases, are largely mundane affairs. It's not going to be the next serial top hit on TV, but it will be on TV if it's in Utah. The second thing, though, is we've seen a lot of politicians jump into the pool. We've seen the Utah governor first come out quite strongly, I think, with the right kind of sentiments of this is terrible. This person must be brought to justice. That's completely separate from anything having to do with First Amendment and the like, making the right noises, where Trump and the federal government and other sort of Trump circle making exactly the wrong noises of inflaming partisanships, saying this is all the fault of Democratic rhetoric against me, Trump, calling for the death penalty. That, by the way, in and of itself, is going to give rise to pretrial litigation. The president said this should give the death penalty. How can anybody fairly sit in this case? Anytime you get the political figures mucking up the situation, you have the possibility of messy legal issues and ones potentially that even don't come to the fore until after the trial. So this is a case that could get tricky and funky and politics, and I don't even mean the politics that so far have kind of polluted it, but just the straight out jockeying of different figures who want to be associated with a high profile prosecution. So, principle one might come as a surprise, but this is not the feds coming in and taking charge of the show. They have no show to take charge of, but they'll be around and they'll be providing some help, and we will nevertheless have a kind of state-federal relationship that could work well, might work poorly, could be both of them. And, this is a case, thing I said from the start, first and foremost, you want it to work professionally in a nonpartisan way, away from politics. You always want that. But here, where the commander-in-chief has made it so much about politics in a way that could both create legal messes and abridge constitutional guarantees, you have to consider that possibility and hope that everybody behaves. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.